This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Nermeen Sheikh. Our guests are Hannah Alam, who is in Baghdad, Iraq right now, and Patrick Cockburn also joins us from London. He's the Middle East correspondent for The Independent. He just returned from 10 days of reporting in Iraq and has a new book just coming out called The Jihadis Return, ISIS and the New Sunni Uprising. Patrick, you, in your latest piece, say that as much of the world attention is focused on the bombardment of Gaza, that ISIS has captured much of eastern Syria. Can you explain?
Yes, I mean, the caliphate that they declared so recently has just got a lot bigger. And rather amazingly, the world hasn't paid much attention because of Gaza. They've attacked towards Deir ez-Zor, which is a big province with a lot of oil wells in eastern Syria. They probably hold about 98% of it now. There's a bit of the capital of city which is held by the Assad government, but otherwise they've routed the opposition, Syrian opposition, aside from themselves, and they've also launched another offensive towards one of the Kurdish enclaves right up on the Turkish border. There are about 500,000 people there at Kobani. They're using, I was talking to people in the enclave yesterday, and the ISIS have about 5,000 fighters there, but they've also got tanks and artillery that they captured in Iraq. They're driving around in American Humvees, also captured, and they're putting a lot of pressure on. So they're really taking the whole sort of eastern side of Syria to the east of the city of Aleppo, and they probably will advance towards that in the future. But it's a major success for them following their takeover of Mosul and for northern and western Iraq. And rather surprisingly, given publicity after the fall of Mosul, that this really hasn't gathered much attention in the rest of the region or in Europe or America.
Patrick Cockburn, Hannah Alam was speaking earlier about the support that ISIS or the Islamic State has among disenfranchised Sunnis who feel that they were marginalized under the Maliki government. And you've suggested in a piece you wrote earlier that you feel that ISIS or the Islamic State is likely to get much more mass support than Al-Qaeda did. Could you explain why that's the case, given that they are so have been so brutal?
Well, they're also victorious. I mean, they're the vanguard of the Sunni community. You have 5 or 6 million Sunni in Iraq, and oppressed by the government, feeling persecuted, and they may not like the methods employed by ISIS, but one, there isn't much they can do about it, but ISIS so far has delivered victory. I think down the road they're going to find they've made a pact with the devil, that they can't get rid of ISIS, that their areas will become impoverished, that this is an extraordinarily pathologically violent movement. But for the moment, the ISIS movement is attracting a lot of young Sunni. They get paid, but they also feel that they're joining a victorious army. And the same is true in eastern Syria. They're recruiting people from the other rebel movements. So nothing is really succeeding like success.
Can you talk about who Abu Bakr Baghdadi is and talk about the declaration of the caliphate and what that means?
Al-Baghdadi comes out of the Al-Qaeda movement. There's some evidence that he was in Afghanistan. He joined with Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, who set up Al-Qaeda in Iraq at the time of the American-U.S. invasion. It was against the occupation, but it was above all against Shia. It's a deeply bigoted movement, very sectarian. It's somewhat similar to Wahhabism out of Saudi Arabia, but its method was the suicide bomber, and its targets were orphan civilians. So he's come out of that, He was in jail under the Americans for a bit. He took over al-Qaeda in Iraq when it was at a very low point in 2010. But above all, what made him the success that he is now is the start of the revolt in Syria, the Sunni revolt there, which destabilized the situation in Iraq, and the fact that al-Maliki, the prime minister of Iraq, successfully alienated the whole Sunni community. So they were willing to unite. These very different movements and groups that you've described were willing to unite under the banner of ISIS. Maybe they want to get rid of them in future, but they'll find that that's real difficult.
I'd like to go back to Hannah Alam in Baghdad. Hannah, could you talk about the U.S. military advisors who were sent to Iraq last month and Major General Dana Pittard, who is overseeing this advisory effort? What exactly are U.S. military advisors doing there? How many are there? Could you say a little about that?
Sure. There are a couple of hundred U.S. military personnel in country. They are trying to decide what the U.S. role should be going forward. I should note that when the U.S. was preparing to withdraw and wanted to tout all its successes in training and equipping the Iraqi army, press access was great. There were plenty of spokespeople around. In 2010, I did an embed along the Iranian border, and you'd hear rank-and-file soldiers say, "We're not sure that our Iraqi counterparts are ready. We are worried about corruption. We're worried about all the things that have since come to light in the collapse last month." However, that wasn't the vision or the outlook that you got from Washington at the time. They said training's on track. We are going to be able to turn this thing over to the Iraqis, and everything will be fine. Now, I've asked for an interview with Major General Pittard here, and I was told that all press inquiries must go through the Pentagon in Washington, even though I'm just a couple of miles from the U.S. advisors who are in the green zone. So, you know, the Pentagon assessment of this, there have been leaks from that, and it's shown that there are very deep concerns that even if there is a decision to advise these forces in a more meaningful way, going out with them, trying to rebuild them, there are only half of the operational units are able to even accept that kind of help from the U.S. Only about half of the forces are operational. Certainly they melted away in the north, and there's also a great fear of infiltration among the forces, according to the Pentagon, and that's a fear that's on both the Shia militia side, with the Iranian-backed militiamen infiltrating the security forces, as well as Sunni insurgents.